Hello everyone, this is Mr. Fox bringing you a fully read edition of the Artbook of Scorn, the horror game by Ebb Software. Purpose of this video is to share with as many people as possible the great work and imagination of the people that have worked on this game. This PDF and audio content represents the digital deluxe content of the game. If you liked what you saw, please support the developers by buying this content along with the game. If you like my reading of this material, please consider dropping a like, comment, and subscribe. Scorn, the art of the game. A book by Matthew Pellet, published by Titan Books. Content warning: this book contains references to and images of gore and adult themes, which some readers may find upsetting. Contents of the book are split to Introduction, the protagonist, the Scorn universe, and its chapters, the assembly, the wall, the field, the crater, Polis, the blasted labyrinth, and the tower. Afterwards, it's followed by the inhabitants, the moldmen, the crater creatures, the homunculi, the cyborgs, and the shells. Lastly, weapons and interfaces, split to guns and interfaces. Book ends with logo variations, promos and covers, trailers, storyboard, and acknowledgements. Introduction. Mankind's fascination with horror stretches back hundreds of years. Through campfire stories, books, films, and video games, we've endeavored to scare with and in turn be scared by the unexpected, the unexplained, and the unimaginable. Part of that fascination comes down to there being few absolutes in horror. One person's fear may be deemed ridiculous by others. Stories or situations that creep and crawl beneath somebody's skin could very easily have no effect on somebody else. The thrill of a scare may be followed by relief that it's over, or lingering unease and haunted memories. Bloody slasher films and subtle, subversive psychological thrillers are both classed as horror, but are two approaches. The two approaches are so different to the point of being unrelated. In Scorn, Serbian developer Ebb Software took a very specific journey for its interpretation of horror. CEO and game director Ljubomir Pekler wanted to make a game with no direct comparison. He envisioned a first-person adventure that could make players feel unsettled, not with explicit displays of gore, though Scorn does not shy away from some gruesome moments, or through intense action sequences, but primarily by players studying and being immersed in environments that mix the familiar with the unknown. Odd shapes and somber tapestry is how Ebb Software defines the building blocks of Scorn universe, a gothic and surrealistic biomechanical vision designed by concept artist Filip Akovic, with the intent of fascinating and confounding. Indeed, the idea of the unexplained is so entrenched within Scorn's design that it will even apply to the development team itself. We abandon the notion that we are going to understand everything we see in the game, said Akovic about the early days of embarking on a journey to craft a world like no other. To the right, for decades, games have explained the idea of players being trapped inside a giant living creature. Core takes a different path. Players explore constructed mechanical spaces where the building blocks for these structures and mechanisms happen to be organic matter. It's just not the player who is going to experience this, it's us also, and we made it. That's particularly hard for some people to accept. They tend to require some explanation. How was this done? Who did this and for what purpose? Scorn's genesis isn't one of meticulously mapped out plans then, but of themes that Peckler wanted to express and experiment with. There wasn't a well-defined story, said Alkovich. It was a thing of poor inspiration. He, the game director Lyubomir Pekler, presented ideas to me and then we started talking. I made a few early pieces to get a feel at what the world would be like and how it would look. Those themes number in the dozens. Many are only apparent in certain occasions or items or creatures, but three of the core themes that act as umbrella over the whole projects are ones of existence, entropy, and the relationship between human beings and technology. You are just born into this conundrum like we all are, says Beckler of that initial theme of existence. And everything is related to our existence, to our own existence. This tether to our own existence is crucial. In the years since Scorn was first unveiled, many people have suggested its world is alien. It's not, confirmed Spectre, it's an extrapolation of our world. We just push it to the limits. Beckler views the convergence of human and technology as an important offshoot of that first theme. Are we losing ourselves and our own essence? He asks. Are we being overwhelmed by technology? It's these questions that led to the team studying H.R. Giger 1940 2014, the creative visionary behind the Alien films. Many artists and creators look toward the work of Giger as a first step, but end up with visions far removed from those of Scorn. Beckler believes the reasoning for this is clear and all stems from motivation. Giger's work was never chosen as an inspiration because it looked interesting or featured cool looking imagery. Most people don't know how to read his art properly, says Beckler. We wanted to explore similar themes and it was just a logical step to go there. Giger's pretty much it if you want to explore fusion of mankind and technology or sexuality and technology. Many people like xenomorphs and that's it. But there's so much more to Giger's art. Beckler and Akovic would rather look past Alien's iconic xenomorph design and instead study the film's space jockey, the pilot of the crashed spaceship on LV-426. The space jockey is mysterious, grins Beckler. is dead. You can construct many different stories about it, but don't know you don't know anything really. That's what's interesting. The mystery is what gets your mind percolating and reflecting. For Akovic, it was the space jockey's visual identity rather than its mystery that helped play the big part in weaving the fabrics of Scorn concept art. Space Jockey is particularly interesting in the aesthetic sense of what we were trying to do because you aren't sure what you are looking at, he says. He seems to be fused with the chair. It is indistinguishable. The technology and the living tissue all look as if it's a part of one. To the left, unconventional construction materials and methods turn even the most standard wall into a feature. Scorn spacing affords players the movement of force players the freedom to meticulously study the surroundings without fear of retribution. You can't really separate the technology from the biology of the environment, and it's exactly the same as we're trying to do. Everything with Scorn abides by the idea of solid materials impregnated with organic growth, weaponry, walls, control panels, statues, doors. The list goes on. Throughout this book, you'll see depiction of items and buildings of all shapes and sizes, all conceived as natural fusions of organic matter and technology. Top to bottom, the universe is a biomechanical construct and it's one ravaged by decay. The theme of entropy forms a core component of the protagonist's design, feeding directly back into the existing steam. Yet it's also vitally important for the overall universe. The whole world is that way, says Beckler. The idea of a world in its final stages is very compelling. Scorn's biomechanical world can be considered as a body stretched out on a gurney, quietly undergoing rigor mortis, muscles locked stiff, and microorganisms adjusting to their new, quieter surroundings turned food source. You, as the player, have ventured over and given it a violent shake for the final death rattle, rousing long dormant mechanisms from eternal slumber for the final time. Your interruption is but a temporary disturbance in the decaying process, and it's the depiction of putrescence where Scorn's second major outline influence is most apparent. The key visual representation of decay in Scorn is informed by Beksinski, says Philip Akovich, meaning Zdzislaw Beksinski. To the right, we have every mechanism within Scorn's world need to adhere to the universe's biomechanical laws. Here we can see fuses that connect into sockets via optic nerves like tendrils with organic tubing carrying signals to other areas. Below, what we have while bioluminescence is sometimes used to illuminate dark corners, explorable spaces are designed around the availability of external light sources whenever possible. The opposite have references to H.R. Giger's space jockey from Alien 1979 are most apparent in Scorn's release Remove the harsh surface layer and you'll find tissue and organs lurking beneath. Meaning Zdzislaw Bekinski, 1929 2005, the Polish painter and sculptor whose work on dystopian surrealism is the DNA from which Scorn's aesthetic was assembled. The way he depicted this, his words, was never meant to be realistic, Akovich continues, but it conveys decay really well and is extremely expressive. Everything merges together, forms become indistinguishable, cracked, hollow, and slowly rotting away in an almost spider web like pattern. His vision helped us achieve the look and feel we are aiming for. In our own world, organic decaying processes, the muscular matter first stiffen after death, then relax, eventually liquefy. In Besinski's world, these final two steps don't happen. Liquids coagulate and then calcify, while toughened, atrophied matter doesn't dissolve but instead peels and flakes away. Nightmarish visions of dried world husks dominate his work, and it's clear to see the artistic through line from his paintings to Scorn's universe. Beyond Geiger's and Bekinski, it's much tougher to pinpoint specific inspiration for Scorn's concept artwork with good reason. There aren't many. Concept art concept artist Philip Akovich deliberately avoided referencing other artists during the concept phase to ensure his work wasn't overly affected by outside sources. Both Akovich and Beckler can name long lists of film directors, authors, and philosophers, as well as other artists: David Cronenberg, David Lynch, Dario Argento, Franz Kafka, Jorge Luis Borges, J. G. Ballard, Thomas Ligotti, Albert Camus, Martin Heidegger, Ernest Becker, and Sigmund Freud all deserve credit here, whose bodies of work played a part in Scorn's genesis as general stimuli, but never as referenced material. There's a wealth of visual information I've stored into my brain over the years just through watching movies and reading books and comics, said Akovich. You're being influenced all the time, but I avoided seeking explicit inspiration whenever I could. Keen to flush his mind as much outside the interference as possible, Akovich began the Scorn conceptualization process by designing the game's protagonist and used these images as launchpad for the rest of the project. It was all but designing a visual language that would inform everything, which is why we began with the main character, he says. We designed the whole world around him because we wanted to avoid familiar tropes in horror and science fiction, and instead take a more surrealist approach. Iteration was key to success. Concept pieces that felt too recognizable as real-world items or structures were quickly amended or outright rejected. At first, this brutal approach led to many discarded designs, but the rate eased up over time. It gets progressively easier, and after a while, you just instinctively know what looks right, and what is completely wrong. Reflects Akovic on the challenge of shaping Scorn's vision across the years of development. This instinctual thematic approach, freed from as many outside influences as possible, may be unconventional, but as unconventional approach is what was required to design a universe steeped in visual concepts previously unseen. The result of this approach is a unique and expressive universe that's open to each player's interpretation. It would be nice if players discovered the themes with added, ruminated Lyubomir Peklar, but if they see something else, that's equally valid. People's education and view on life will be imbued in the visual in some way. It's not always about what's happening in the game, but how it makes you feel. End of introduction. See you guys in the next episode about the protagonist.